Seth Kaplan, the managing partner at Airline Weekly, joins us live from Florida to talk more about where the search goes from here. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Susan.
Seth, given the information that we know, how confident are you that these pings are coming from the black box of MH370?
Hard to be too confident. And in fact, the news Sunday that a second vessel, an Australian vessel, also detected something that seemed like pings, but far away from where the Chinese vessels detected those pings, if anything, don't inspire confidence. If anything, they show that it could be possible to have a false positive. A bit strange because certainly the whole point of the frequency that these sonar emitters use, this 37.5 kilohertz that we've heard, is that it doesn't resemble very many other things. But here we see these two potential detections very far apart, and clearly one of them at least is not correct. And so that in fact shows us that in fact both of them as well might not be the case.
Seth, as you know, a lot of focus has been on the battery life of the black box. How much more difficult will this be once it dies?
Well, it'll be quite a bit more difficult, but to be clear, it would take a lot of luck for these apparent pings to in fact be what we hope they are, because you can only detect these pings when you're very, very close to begin with. And so again, while on one hand, it does seem like reason for confidence, on the other hand, the idea that we would be within, let's say, a couple of miles of the crash site when we really can't narrow it down beyond perhaps a couple hundred miles at best. Again, that would take a lot of luck. So beyond that, we'd be relying on very different technology. At that point, instead of basically listening for pings, being in a reactive mode, we use sonar, but it's a very different kind of sonar. It's what's called side scanning sonar. Basically, taking a picture of the ocean floor, instead of just receiving signals, putting out signals and seeing what's on the ocean floor. And there is precedent, certainly, for finding a crash site after the pings have stopped from those sonar, from those transmitters emitting the sonar. Air France 447 off Brazil was found 2 years after it crashed and long after those pings had stopped.
All right, so you're saying the chances are fairly good that these pings may in fact not be related to MH370. What could they be coming from?
Well, there are all kinds of noises under the ocean floor. Very clearly, as Angus Houston, in charge of the search in Australia, and others have continually said, this is unprecedented. This is new ground even for these researchers. And by the way, important to remember, too, that even if we find this needle in the haystack, even if we find these black boxes, there's still question as to just how useful they would be. The audio, the cockpit voice recorder in particular, is on a 2-hour loop, and this plane will have crashed many more hours than 2 hours after the incident began. If one person was acting alone in the cockpit, Susan, just to get an idea of how daunting this all is, there's the chance that we would have not one word on that audio reporter. The data recorder, on the other hand, fortunately, is on a much longer loop, and it would be a bit more useful.
Yes, Seth, there are so many hypotheticals talking about this, but how much credibility, let me ask you, do you give this new report that the plane may have skirted the airspace, the Indonesian airspace, and how crucial would this be in this puzzle, trying to find this airplane?
Well, it sounds like reasonable information. What it does, if anything, is just further confirm something that has become more and more apparent, and that's the simple fact that this does, in fact, look like a crime. It's easy to forget now that in the days after this incident, a lot of people plausibly made arguments that, hey, this could be an accident. And as more and more information emerges, that becomes more of a stretch. I mean, look, we're still missing a lot of information here, enough information that you can still make the case for various scenarios. But every time we hear another fact like that one, like in this case, the fact that somebody seems to have tried to really thread a needle and avoid detection, it further confirms that it seems like there was somebody doing this on purpose. That the idea that this was somehow some kind of slow burning fire or some of the other theories that have been out there at first are more of a stretch than ever.
Seth Kaplan, the managing partner of Airline Weekly, thank you so much for your time and insight. We appreciate it.